David Malachar here with the Liberty Chronicle Independent. We are doing a recap today on May Day here in Seattle, Washington. I have with me today Kyle Broussard. Thank you so much for coming on today. We're going to be asking him a couple questions about his thoughts about May Day in Seattle. He was highlighted on a couple publications for how he was able to de-escalate multiple conflicts within the May Day presence that was there in Westlake Park. So Kyle, let's go ahead and let's get your perspective, like a short recap of what you thought how May Day went as far as the conflict between independents, conservatives, and other people that were there that were opposing the conflicting Antifa, oppressive, our voice is the only voice type of reaction.
Sure. So over in Westgate, down in Olympia, there was a lot of conflict. The homeless took them on. There was a lot of conflict arising that became violent really, really quickly. In Westgate, it was kind of a different story. There definitely was the potential. I do not credit myself with this under any pretext, but there have been a couple of people who've really pointed me out of the crowd. And a lot of that is because every time I saw pro-Trump or anti-Trump supporters starting to go head-to-head, I would insert myself directly into the center. I'm neither. I'm definitely not a Trump supporter, but I'm really happy Hillary Clinton lost. But when you have an independent voice coming between the two warring factions and you can start to speak sense to them, like whoever throws the first punch is going to be in the wrong regardless. And that violation of someone else's rights by putting violence on them very quickly for no apparent reason other than you disagree politically is nonsensical. So whenever I inserted myself into a situation where it was definitely rearing up for a fight, a lot of people were having a lot of nasty words and they were getting up in each other's faces really quickly, I basically stopped any of it. I grabbed people together. There was one person who had actually brought out a small bag of weed, and I asked them if we could roll some joints together, and I gave them a platform. It was a protest sign, actually. Gave them a platform, they started rolling joints, and I started lighting up for a pro-Trump guy. And then, just to kind of bring in the link, I grabbed one of the Antifa people. His name is Jacob, actually. I got to meet with him afterwards. And we ended up smoking together. It's like, this political difference between one another as Americans is not really that important. I understand that you think it's really important. You think it's a threat to your safety. The biggest threat to your safety is trying to itch a fight between these two, which will cause physical violence. That's what's going to be the primary cause of harm to yourself and to others if you consistently look for this fight. So it got violent really, really late in the game, and it was very, very small. And I think the reason for that is because there were myself and numerous other actors who were trying to de-escalate situations constantly. I think that was primarily the reason that violence didn't come about.
And the incident I believe you're referring to was the one that happened at the very end of the day. There was an older lady who was very confrontational. She was yelling at everyone. She had her iPad aggressively in everyone's face. You can also see that on Liberty Chronicle's Facebook page. I've got a video of that up on right now, and I'll include it in the article as well. Is there anything you wanted to add onto that?
Yeah, actually, I was actually directly next to it.
Yes, you were, yes.
I don't know if you ever caught it on film,
yes,
but
yes.
I understand why she struck out. If you're surrounded by 10, 15 different people, most of them pro-Trumpers who are wearing body armor, you're going to be a little intimidated. She did lash out. She did initiate violence quickly, but that was in direct response. She did act irrationally. I agree that she was at fault at this. The problem is that the response to that wasn't appropriate to me. I was actually the one who stood in front of her, in front of the Trump supporters, yes, because a small old lady, don't get me wrong, she did initiate the violence, but I think the response of 10 armed men kept bearing down on her with violent, ferocious force, that's a little too far.
Agreed.
Yes. If you're gonna punish someone for the crime, make the punishment fit the crime. Yes, she hit a man who is twice her size, who is in armor. Okay, give her to the police. That's all that needs to be done. So I actually stood in front of her, took a shield to the face.
Yes.
And that was, I want to make sure people are safe, regardless of whether you're pro-Trump, anti-Trump, stop the violence. Antifa is only encouraging violence. I'm strictly anti-fascist. Like, not Antifa, but I'm against the Antifa movement. They are using nonsensical rationale to justify violence, and they are pushing for violence every step of the way. If one voice can go to Antifa is just stop. You are causing the problems.
Correct.
You are causing the violence, and you are causing
The tension.
this tension between the two parties.
Yes, and you said before previously that you didn't really associate with the Trump supporters in the crowd, but you were there as almost like a mediation, and that your views are more towards like the libertarian perspective versus an oppressive ideology such as fascism or being like a nationalist supremacist and all this other nonsense that's out there.
I consider myself an independent or a libertarian. It just comes down to the government already has too much power. And the reasoning for this polarization is because whenever one gets into power, it can cause genuine destruction to the other side. The only way to really mediate that is to actually pull the power back from the executive branch, so that way they can't do ridiculous amounts of harm to the other parties. So if a Republican were to get in, if you restrict the power, they can't do a lot of harm to the Democrats, so that's an interest to the Democrats. Same thing vice versa, if a Democrat gets into the Republicans. It's actually in the best interest of both parties to start restricting power from the executive branch, so that way it can't cause undue harm to either political party that are the primaries, for like the Democrats or the Republicans, or the American people and the American electoral system.
Right, and that's the entire purpose, is to protect the people, because it's a government that's represented by us. It's not that we are serving them. And I believe that a lot of these political groups these days have lost sight of that. I don't know why, because it's right there in the Constitution.
It's easy to understand, mainly due to power. I'm going to go back to the old phrase of power corrupts absolutely, and absolute power corrupts. I butchered that saying, but absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yes.
So,
when it comes to the overall day, though, like you did do a lot of de-escalation, and obviously we were all there. We saw what was going on firsthand, and you can watch the other videos that'll be included in this article as well. Do you feel like we made an impact that day in a statement to the world that said that, hey, we're tired of these extreme groups causing chaos in our cities, and we want stability, we want peace, we want to find common ground and work together?
I was interviewed on Cairo radio, and I made it very clear I was a libertarian, and they genuinely were happy with what I did. I've actually been approached by several people who said one of the key reasons that it didn't escalate to that to the level of Olympia was because of my, as well as a couple other people's actions. The libertarians want peace. We want peace between the people because we're all Americans. Whether you want to call yourself an American or not, you're here, you're on the soil, and you're going to be governed by the rules that are in place at the moment. So you might as well understand that we can at least get to peace through one caveat by kind of disarming the government, not through like the armaments, but just their power that they wield. Seattle is a very interesting place right now. We have a long history of riots that have become violent, the WTO protests back in the 90s, as well as numerous others. For the statement that was being made, if I do say that the pro-Trumpers were significantly more civil than the anti-Trumpers, but not by much. And it's unfortunate for me to have to say that when you have to give the pro-Trumpers the benefit of the doubt. Trump is not a good president. He's not. We've already witnessed a lot of his failures, but I don't think Clinton would have been any better. But libertarians, we have to understand that we should be the primary focus here of trying to mediate between the two sides. They're both failing in their, whatever their political opinions may be, they're both failing because they're dogmatic in their approach. They don't understand that the will of the populace is for more peace. We want individual freedoms. We also want fiscal conservatism. We don't want to be spending all of our money to where we can't spend it on anything because we're in numerous amounts of debt. When you actually talk to the majority of the population of the United States, the parties don't represent them. That's why we have such a low voter count.
Correct. So,
do I think that the Libertarian Party is making a statement? I think through people who are a lot smarter than I am and a lot better than I am playing a very small role. But I think if enough small roles are taken, we can be considered a legitimate force in the political spectrum. And if we do that, you can't take us as someone who's not worth listening to. Why wouldn't you listen to the peace movement? That's why Gandhi was listened to. That's why Martin Luther King Jr. was listened to. That's why a lot of people were listened to.
Yes.
Bring the peace, and sooner or later you will be seen as legitimate.
And having that constructive criticism, even towards your own movement per se is what keeps things in check and keeps things balanced and going forward. Whereas like we're seeing a lot of nonsensical things in the mainstream media that get sensationalized, such as like the other day, Trump, for example, had 2 scoops of ice cream. How is that news? How is that constructive? And how does that help mend the burned bridges that we have in our society today? So Kyle here is definitely making a change on the local level, and you are more than welcome to step foot in your own communities and stand up and speak out, because all it takes is your individual effort to make something happen. That's all that everything has ever resulted from. The United States in general was created from a bunch of guys getting together talking about liberty and eventually escalating to the point of having a revolution.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's just a matter of you have to take steps on your own, because until someone does something, no movement can really occur. So it is a ripple effect. So what we're doing here in Seattle is definitely echoing across the country and across the globe.
The Libertarian Party is based on the idea that government has too much power already. I encourage anybody to stop relying on the government to do it for you. If you are genuinely a libertarian, if you genuinely believe that the political parties have gained way too much power, if you genuinely believe our government has gone too far regarding taxation as well as power and influence amongst the individual lives of the populace, stop relying on them to do it. Start doing it in your own community, start doing it in your own constituency, start running for local office. The more people who are in smaller city elections or city councils, the more of us that are influencing those kind of local level politics, the faster that we will be seen throughout the entire United States. And they will start to realize we are a sensible, understandable, and logical voice in the conversation, rather than just simply the dogmatic approach of the Republicans and the Democrats.
Absolutely. Support your local candidates, get involved, look up their information. LCI is a publication that focuses specifically on local candidates all across the country that are liberty-minded. And whenever you see a candidate in one of our articles, feel free to contact them, volunteer, donate, anything that you can do, because even if everybody just donated $1, that's still more funding than they would have ever had no one were able to donate even that. So your money is well spent when you invest it into projects that benefit everyone. Kyle, you've given a lot of information today. Is there anything else you would like to let the audience know as far as any other final thoughts on May Day or anything else in general before we sign out?
Yeah, in regard to violence, we understand that we want to be the peace bringers, but there is a place and time for force, and it's normally for the defense of others. I did not agree with the anti-Trumper lady who was screaming about and ended up hitting a person in armor, but I still stood in to protect her because there was undue force. We have to understand that there is an amount of force that needs to be done to protect the people. Okay? And when you look at Antifa, oppose them. Do not allow these people to think that they can get away with suppressing freedom of speech, to suppress the religious liberties of others, to suppress the rights of individuals just to simply speak their mind. Do not allow this to go unopposed. It is a small movement now, but if they go unopposed, they will grow, and they will cause even more destruction than they already have.
Kyle, thank you so much for spending time with us today. This is Kyle Broussard. We are here in Seattle, Washington. We were covering May Day 2017. Thank you guys so much for your time. This is David Malachar with LCI signing off.